So we have the life vests under here. It's not compulsory to wear them. We have our captain Antti today, and my name is Diana. I'll be your guide today. We'll drive about 50 minutes to the Malusi Islands, and usually the seals are resting somewhere there. I'm gonna come and explain you a little bit about the islands, but because the engine is quite loud, I can't do loud talking, so I'll just come group by group and show you a little bit where we are going and so on. And when we arrive on the spot, then we'll talk, we'll slow down the boat, or maybe if it's really calm, we can turn off the engine completely. And then we have time to talk more about the seals and if you have any questions. So we'll spend some time around the islands where the seals are, and then we'll just drive back another 40 to 50 minutes. So all in all, it's going to be about 2.5 hours, maybe 3 hours if we see many seals. Let's see how it goes. Okay, so enjoy the ride. Is there anyone who wants a life vest I can give you? You're okay. Okay, it's calm waters today, so we should be okay. And it's possible to put them down, so if it gets too windy or anything, just let me know, but I think it's quite nice today, so maybe not needed. Kas te saate inglise keeles täitsa aru, et ei ole? Okei, siis ma teen, et lihtsalt me võime vahepeal eesti keeles rääkida, kui teil mingeid oma küsimusi on, aga jah, et ma siis... Tead see selline 50-50, et hästi nagu sõltub et ma ütleks isegi, et täna on nagu palju välismaalasi, et tavaliselt on nagu, et tavaliselt on nagu võib-olla pooleks või vahel on ka päris nagu ainult Eesti grupp ja. On the peninsula, and we will be taking the boat past this Rammu Island, and the seals are usually in this area in the Malusi Islands, and usually between the two Malusi Islands. So now what we can see is the first island over there, that's Koipsi Island, and in front is Rammu Island. And all these islands used to be inhabited permanently. There were like fishermen and seal hunters living on the islands. From about 300 years ago, they were inhabited and they created villages there. And even if the islands are quite small, there were like 100 people living on Rammu Island and around 50 living on Koipsi Island. And even some people living on this Umblu Island, which is less than 1 hectare. But they didn't need very much land because they were fishermen. So they didn't need to, they were trading fish to have some like wheat and potatoes and whatever from the mainland. So they were, mostly fishermen and seal hunters. And they even had a small school on Rammu Island, primary school, and also a graveyard and so on, so like normal life. And on this South Malusi Island, so here quite incredible that somebody was living there for 40 years and running a pub. But life on the islands, it ended after the Second World War, when Estonia was occupied by the Soviet Union. And then the border guards told the local families that they have to move away. So that was in 1952, some years after the war. They said that, okay, you need to pack up and go. So most of the families, they just left to go and live on the mainland. Some moved to, so there was one island in the area, Prangli Island, where they allowed people to stay. So some people also moved to Prangli Island. But from this area, mostly to the mainland. And also about half the population of the islands had already left to Finland and to Sweden. So they had already escaped during the Second World War because they had the boats, so they were able to just secretly cross over. So yeah, for all of the Soviet period, there was no human inhabitant on the islands, only birds and some interesting plant species and so on. And it's only now in the 90s and 2000s that some people have moved back and built their summer cottages there. So on those islands there's no permanent inhabitants, there's nobody living year round, but some people from this Viimne area and so on are having their summer cottages there. And it's all a nature reserve, so it's a protected area, mainly for the birds' life, but also for some specific plant species, because these are the northernmost areas of Estonia, so there are some plants that don't grow anywhere else in Estonia, only on those islands. So they try to also protect those areas. So usually because of the bird breeding time, you're not allowed to visit many of the islands during the bird breeding time. So usually between April and June, you're not really allowed to go there. But after that time, you can visit. Yeah. So it's nowadays the islands somehow feel very quiet and mostly uninhabited, but it was very different like 100 years ago. Very lively communities, a lot of cultural life, a lot of exchanges happening with also lots of contact with Finland, because the culture was similar, also like the fishing and seal hunting culture. So they had a lot of exchanges, and they were also very mobile, much more mobile than maybe other people on the mainland, because they had the boats. So they would travel to Germany and bring like the new trends, like drinking coffee maybe earlier than the people on the mainland. So even if the communities were small, they were culturally quite advanced, I would say, and maybe picking up on the new trends for clothing and everything, sometimes faster than some of the areas in the mainland. So yeah, in some ways it's a shame that this culture is a bit lost, but over time more people are having boats in Estonia, and the islands are like discovered also more, and yeah, some people kind of at least moving back for the summer to the islands into their summer houses, so trying to preserve a little bit of the existing life that used to be there. Yeah. So nowadays we have only the permanent residents are only on Prangli Island, which is a little bit further that way, and there's about 75 people living on that island year round. They still have a working shop and a culture house and a harbour and so on, and there's also everyday ferry crossing also to the Prangli Island, so that's one of the more visited islands of this area. Yeah. Kuidas tunne on? Kas see on ikka see militaarsõjalaev seal? Mis eesmärk? Okay, so now we can see the seals. So two of them are on the rocks just in front of us. I can give someone my binoculars as well. Do you wanna? So these binoculars are quite good, the ones that he's holding. So if you don't see with the other ones, you can try with these. So they go out and eat, and then they come to take a rest on the rocks, and they prefer these kind of areas where they have good kind of visibility. So they don't like to be on the islands where there's like high growth of plants or trees. They prefer quite like single rocks or very low vegetation islands. And yeah, they just take a rest and warm themselves up in the sun. So now is kind of like the pleasant season for the seals, you know, to feed and grow fat, because they've just gone through a very tough season. So the cycle of the year for the seals is that around around March, they give birth to one pup, the females. And maybe you've seen on the pictures, the pups are looking really fluffy and white. They have a fur similar to the polar bear. So it's like a baby fur. And the babies are not able to swim in that fur. So in the first 2-3 weeks of their life, they really depend on the mother to feed them the breast milk. And the breast milk has very high fat content. Lucky today, there's quite many of them. Sometimes it also seems like when it's less windy, like when it's very quiet weather, then there seems to be more. But it's not a rule either, so it's depends on also if they've gone out for fishing or is it a resting time. There's also a story that the seals are quite musical, that they like classical music. And how it was discovered was that two guys from one of the islands, from Oxy, they were about 100 years ago, they were coming back from Finland on their boat, and they were playing music. So they had a harmonicum and a violin on the boat, and they were playing music, and then suddenly they realized that there were about 20 seals following the boat and popping their heads out. So they realized that they just became curious and came to see what's happening, where the music is coming from. So we can also today try to play a little bit of classical music and see if more of them are coming. But yeah, to be honest, some of the captains are also saying that they are just curious to any kind of sound. So it's also possible that just the boat sound and our own talking can also attract their interest. Yeah. the seals have also been a little bit mystical animals in many cultures. So not so much in the Estonian tradition, but in the Irish and Scottish tradition. They believe in creatures called selkies. And the selkies are half seal, half human. So when they are in the sea, they are covered in the seal skin, so you think they are seals. But when they come on the land, they can take off the seal skin and become into beautiful human beings. And then the other humans are usually very attracted to them. So there are these legends that somebody tries to marry a beautiful selkie, and to make sure that they don't turn back into a seal, they hide the seal skin. But maybe sometime in the future the selkie would find again its skin, maybe hidden away somewhere in the cupboard, and is tempted to put it on again and go back to the sea and never be seen again. So there's a lot of different legends around the selkies. And they believe that it might have, the selkies might have been created because the Irish and the Scottish, they saw some people from the Lapland area coming in their kayaks made from the seal skin and also wearing the clothes, waterproof clothes made of seal skin. And from time to time they had to come on shore to dry the skins because they would eventually wet out if you're out on the sea for a long time. So they might have seen those clothes made of seal skin and then thought that, you know, these are from those mystical selkie creatures. So that's one possible explanation of why these selkie stories came to be so popular. But they say that even nowadays, some people in the remote areas of Ireland and Scotland claim to see the selkies from time to time, these half human, half seal beings. In Estonian tradition, it was more maybe confusion kind of about who the seals are, because they live in the sea. They were considered somehow fish, but like hairy fish. So some of the traditional words that we have for the seals are like korvkala, so saying it's like a hairy fish. And also the hunters believed that you shouldn't call the seal with its real name. You should always give it some other kind of name. So the same, I don't know how it is in your cultures, but we have the same belief for the wolf, for example, that you should never say wolf, the name wolf, when you're out in the forest. You should rather call it in some other way, so saying it's a guy in a grey coat or something like that. So these beliefs we have around the seals as well, that you shouldn't, when you go out hunting, you shouldn't call the seal by its real name, but rather call it a hairy fish maybe. And nowadays in Estonia it's allowed to hunt the seal also. It used to be forbidden for many years, but since, for the last 10 years you're allowed to hunt seals, but they give out a very specific number that you can hunt, and it's calculated based on the current number of population. So we know quite well how big is the population in Estonia for the grey seals. It's the last counting, or the counting from 2024 was around 7,500 seals in Estonian waters, the grey seals. So they take 3% of that number, and that's how many is allowed to hunt. But nowadays the interest in hunting the seals is not so big. It used to be a big tradition for the coastal people. They would use the fur to make clothing, and they would use the meat to eat it, and the fat also they used for cooking, but also used it for making things waterproof, and also to paint the houses, for example. They mixed the seal fat with the paints. But nowadays there's not so much use anymore for the seal. So some of the island people, they still like to eat it, but it has quite a specific taste. So it's not something that people who are not used to the taste of the meat, they might not like it. They just try it, but they wouldn't maybe eat it. And also in the European Union, it's forbidden to trade with seal fur products. So the seal fur could be something that could be used, but at the moment it's not allowed. So it means that most of the seals are hunted by the fishermen, who see them as a competitor for the fish, and often the seals like to come to the fish nets and eat away the fish that are already in the nets. So the fishermen don't like it too much. Sometimes the seals can destroy your whole catch from the nets. So that's also when some of those seals are hunted to keep the population a little bit down and allow the fishermen to get some fish as well. And also the cormorants are so-called enemies of the fishermen, because they also eat a very large part of the fish stock that we have in the Baltic Sea is eaten by the cormorants, and their population is growing bigger and bigger every year. So they are colonizing huge areas on different islands, and wherever the cormorants establish themselves, their poop is so acidic that it destroys the plant life, and it also smells quite strongly when you go close by to the colonies. So there have been talks in Estonia about limiting somehow the number of cormorants that we have. So one of the ways to do it is during the time when they lay their eggs, that the eggs are painted with oil. And it means that no oxygen can get into the egg, and then the egg will not develop into a bird. So it's done a little bit now in some of the areas where there's a lot of cormorants, just to try to keep the population a little bit under control, because otherwise soon there will be almost no fish in the Baltic Sea left. So that rock seems to be like a favorite one. There's so many on that one rock. I can't count if it's maybe 4 more. 5. Yeah. They must like that rock especially. Did you get a good look, or do you still want to? No, you're okay. Yeah, that one is really crazy. So many on the... I don't know how many there are, and I'm trying to count, but maybe 6. Ja seal on see üks madalam kivi, seal on hästi palju peal.